All right, I have with me today Stefan. And Stefan, we just had a quick little chat, get to know each other a little bit because we've been following each other back and forth for over a year now, right? Just through social media, not really engaging, getting to know one another that well. And I did just, say something to him prior to this that we did see each other, or I saw him at least at a meetup or a summit is what it was, over a year ago. And funny enough, how things just come together and you just start to find the right people at the right time and just have a great conversation with them. And I enjoy just hearing a little bit about what you had to share prior to this. And I'm excited to dive in further with what you can share with the audience about not just mental health of what we spoke about, but your journey for where you are today. So, Stefan, would you mind just starting off with like who are you? What are you doing? And what are you most excited about?
Well, first of all, I'm a dad. I love my child and I love my family. So, family man first. Second, I'm a business owner. So, a small business in a video production company called Good Luck Steph. And we also have a cannabis influencing brand called Madman Plant, which has actually led me across the United States. Last year, we were on 15 states in 12 months across panels and conferences, really promoting the wellness about mental health and clarity as um, I'm also a person that deals with his own mental health. I'm not a perfect person, but I do appreciate the opportunities as I get older to recognize things. I think a lot of times, and speaking about the journey, we just get so complacent with, ourselves and time. I think the bigger thing is finding the gratitude, finding the happiness, and really letting that drive. Because I think sometimes with life, with expectations and just, business and just life itself, sometimes you can feel let down, you know what I mean? And that's one thing that I've been working on, essentially as a person is feeling that. So,
Okay, so let's dive into that a little bit.
okay.
So you feel let down, right? So how do you kind of fill that hole?
Well, I think the biggest thing is starting to feel like gratitude. When I was younger, um, I spent a lot of time by myself. I was more of like the nerdy kid that didn't really have any friends who got bullied a lot. And after my suicide attempt when I was younger, which I talk a lot about on my podcast, I went through life really just spending time on my own. And as I got older, you know, when you're younger, you feel like you're losing out because, you feel like the world's going on without you. When you get older, you kind of like that freedom of being left alone because you can go focus on what you're doing. And I think one thing, how I feel that kind of void is finding purpose in my work, and one of the things I just recently signed up to do, which is completely free, is me and my service animal, Honey, are going to be visiting hospice centers. And I just got my certificate from the organization where I had to do 10 hours of lecture courses to do this, and it's with children, so I think a lot of that stuff and really just kind of grounding myself will, feels that, I used to think it'd be like having a Lamborghini or, a lot of money and stuff like that. And I've met a lot of people with Lamborghinis and a lot of money, and not all of them are happy. You know what I mean? So I think my biggest thing is kind of learning how to appreciate myself and what I'm doing, because I think all of us are hard on ourselves because we want more. We strive for more.
Yeah, and do you tend to find yourself surrounding yourself with other people that are
Now
kind of,
now I do. As a
yeah,
business owner, absolutely. And that's one of the things is, being a business owner, it gives you a title, it gives you a certain level of kind of like respect when you walk into a room. It's like you're not just another person, you're a title, you're a podcaster, a business owner, an influencer, whatever it is, you're recognized for your work. And that's one of the best things is, the difference from being younger and older is the fact that, I feel like I have purpose now, where before I felt like I was lost.
all right. And so you said you were lost. Like, why? Why did you feel lost, and what happened that made you feel lost?
I think the biggest thing in people's journey is you don't know what you're good at until you really start working on a craft. And sometimes, like they say, the graveyard is the richest place in the world because that's where most things go to die, especially ideas and creations and things that never happened. And it's one of those things where I look at it as, I started to invest in myself. I started with my production company. I got dumped and left on the side of the road of Arizona and right before Christmas by my ex-fiance. And I have a whole story about that. But it was taking all my pain at the time and putting it into something. And at first it was my video production company, and that gave me a life, that gave me an income, that gave me a business. And then once I locked onto that, I didn't feel like I was lost, like I wouldn't be able to figure out how to make money, because now all of a sudden I'm doing this, but it took time. I went to Wildtech, the motorcycle school, and have a degree in engineering and mechanics for Harley Davidson. That didn't necessarily pan out, but something else did. So I think a lot of it is just time. And I think time, like they say, time heals all wounds. I think that is also the feeling of, either being stuck or lost or, unguided, because when you're in your pre stages, especially as a young person or a young adult, it's kind of the wild, wild west until you kind of grab onto something and, and make it yours.
Yeah. You're big into mental health. Are you like traveling to talk about mental health a
Oh,
lot? Or
absolutely. I was
okay.
just in New York and then I was in LA earlier this year
Okay.
and I
And,
did
and
mental health panels.
oh, nice. Awesome. And so what are you sharing when you speak about mental health?
Okay, so it all revolves around a painting, which is actually behind me, but I don't want to get up right now.
Okay.
And this painting is how I feel about in the inside. And what it depicts is a guy who is in darkness on one side, and through the window, there's a guy banging on the glass, and there's cracks in the glass. And on the other side, it's all magical and vibrant and has tons of color. Well, that painting actually was by one of the first people I interviewed who had a mental health crisis, which was a rape victim, who we sat and talked about all three rape incidents that she went through, um, to kind of give back to her. She's an artist. So what I did is I wrote out what the painting would look like. I had an event last year where we raised $2,600 for breast cancer. I also raised another $7,000 to have the event. And the event was free. The vendors were free. We had public speakers. It was like a summit, but it was all around cannabis. And we donated the money to the Pink Ribbon Boutique. And through that whole thing, oh man, I lost track of what I was saying. Um, Remind me, go back
You were talking about the painting and how you
2 words. Forgot where it was.
you were talking about the painting and you were talking about how
Oh,
you
the
shared
painting.
that when you
Yeah.
went on stage.
During the event, we revealed the painting where I wasn't allowed to see what the painting looked like. And she only had the depiction. She didn't hear the actual speech that was behind it. And there's part of the speech is dedicated to her. But the painting was revealed. That painting now travels with me digitally or physically around. And it's what I read before we start the panel. So the panel starts with my depiction of how life is and how fragile time and space is, and the decisions that we make and what they look like before we die. So a lot of mine is revolving around this, I guess, relationship with death that I'm creating, because I also, in a way, kind of have a fear of death. I don't want to die, but I know it's a part of life. So by entertaining these ideas and conversations and thoughts, and with the hospice work, um, short story, my grandmother passed away of cancer. Before she died, I had a very detailed conversation with her about her death. She said that she was completely fine and completely at peace with dying, and it didn't matter whether she woke up or not. I almost committed suicide, and then in 2020 I was in a very horrific car accident, where I should not be alive, especially where I ended up. And then not only I was in the car, but my son, my wife, and my son's mother-in-law was in the car. and all of us walked away with no injuries. So kind of those two incidences, I didn't feel like she did. So a lot of what I do with mental health is also to kind of fix how I feel inside, because I have my own issues and my own sadness and my own things that I deal with. So it genuinely makes me feel better when I talk to other people, because it lets me know I'm not alone as well. Because I think we all want to know that, whether it's mental health or whether it's just a community, and such.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up about being alone, right? And that's one of the reasons I created this podcast,
Yeah.
so that like people like yourself can share your journey, and other people can go, oh wow, he can get through this too. So can I. I can reach out to him, I can reach out to John, and whatever, I mean, and whoever else that could be that they can reach out to. Um, so I'm glad you brought that up. But so you mentioned like decisions, like we've run out of time, like we're on a time limit, right? And we have to make decisions along the way. Do you feel like that maybe not you, but people in general might just like hold on to making a decision, yeah, because they're afraid of making the wrong one? And then also, how do you know when to make the decision?
Uh, I'll answer your question, but I'm just gonna read part of
Sure,
part of it just so you can actually hear of it. So give me 1 second here.
absolutely.
So where we talk about time is, all right, we'll read this section. It says, in the pursuit, I have learned the balance between chasing goals, living in the present, and I've created a platform. Oh, I don't want to read that part. Give me hold on a second. All right, here we go. Okay, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, this painting is a mirror of my own life struggles and victories. It draws its roots from a time filled with turmoil and confrontation with my own mortality, a near fatal car accident that shook my very foundation. Lying among the wreckage, I was starkly reminded by life's fragility. I was It forced me to contemplate the legacy I was on, to the path that I would leave. Would it merely be memories or something more profound?
Mm, gotcha. That's awesome. And
Yeah.
so that's how you started off.
No, no, no.
Okay, that's just in the middle. Okay,
That's like, yeah.
all right,
How I
gotcha.
started off is it says, as we gather here in the quiet transition from daylight to dusk, let me take you to a place that exists in hours where the world quiets down, the hours that beckon for introspection and revelation. In the realm of the thoughts that occupy my mind during these serene moments, imagine a gallery. This is no ordinary gallery. Here, each time, each canvas holds not just pigments and shapes, but stories, vivid depictions of triumph, despair, and the enduring conflict between.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm glad you had that like right in front of you all the time. That's that's
I
awesome. Yeah, and so like decisions are tough, right? And I make
love
decisions
your dog.
every day. Thank you. The brain says hi, but she's very, she's speechless right now. But yes. Um, so we make decisions, right? And sometimes they're tough decisions, and we tend to hesitate as humans because we're afraid of making the wrong decision because
Mm-hmm.
somebody might judge us in a
Yeah.
sense, right? That's a lesson that we have to take. We have to just take that leap of faith. And I just learning a little bit about you now, you took a lot of leap of faith, just pursuing all the business stuff you've been doing, and now you're talking about mental health in front of audiences. Um, do you see something else growing outside of this besides just speaking about mental health, or and taking your dog to help other people?
Oh yeah, no. We plan to go international next year. We're planning to go to the Berlin event
Mm,
and hopefully set up there with the podcast. um, this, we have the full Madman Plant website, which has a full EDU. So we teach you how to grow your plants, and we also teach you how to grow your mindset. So our philosophy of Madman Plant is, how can you grow a great garden if you can't grow a great human? And the problem with a lot of people, especially into growing, cannabis, because that's the realm that I come from, you spend more time on the plants than you do yourself. And the analogy that I kind of have is the fact that 60 to about 90 days it takes for a plant to produce a harvest. So on the faster scale, so you can cut your bud down and then begin to like dry and cure it, right? Your life in 60 to 90 days, depending on what you're working on, may or may not look like that. And that can draw a lot of turmoil to focus on things that provide instant gratification. But the real value of building wealth is yourself, type thing. And, just like my favorite Jim Rohn says, what would make the marketplace pay more for somebody? It's what they invest in themselves. And if we're constantly invested in ourselves, treating ourselves right, trying to put ourselves in the best light, we'll always have the best opportunity. And I think a lot of people, including me, until I was in this entrepreneurial journey, I didn't know how to do that either. I think a lot of this is self discovery. You have to dedicate the time to yourself to grow and to learn and take things on and accept challenges. And looking at, biggest thing is, failure is not a negative thing. It's a learning. I learn way more when I fail and things go wrong and I have to apologize for, like, hey, this happened, blah, blah, blah. But it's taught me to be a better business person. It's taught me to constantly calculate and maintain my morals. Moral application is big in business. So I think a lot of it has to come with you. I think you decide what you want, and those decisions that you make are all based off of the mission. And if you can stay mission oriented, I think you can do really well. The problem is, with nobody there to make sure that you're doing what you need to do, it's easy to fall off. And I experienced that.
You're absolutely right. And I'm glad you shared the mission part. So I have a values, mission, and vision on my
Oh,
wall,
very
like
cool.
a poster. Yeah, like I created, and then it's I got two spots. But it is something that you have to kind of just you have to spend some time on it, right? And it doesn't take a lot, but have that in front of you. And if you have like an accountability partner or somebody that kind of holds your hand and make sure that you're doing what you should be doing, just
Yep.
like you mentioned, Um, yeah, doing so I've been podcasting for about 2.5 years, and I consider myself an introvert. I never knew I'd be doing this long. Now I'm speaking, now I'm in books, and I ran my own event, and it's just like, and again, like you said, learning lesson. Like I'm like, all right, let's just do it and just see what happens. And
Yes.
and you just go through it, and then you see the next thing in front of you, and you just take that one foot in front of the other, and just, hey, let's see what happens. Um, yeah, you might find the people along the way, the right people to help you, right? Just
Yep.
any, to drag you along. But yeah, just take that step and just see where it goes. Because I loved how you said about the grave and stuff, and I heard that too. How a lot of dreams go to in the grave and stuff. Um, but right now, personally, I don't want regrets. So
Yep.
I might take risks. I might take these tough decisions and just see what happens, right? But I don't want to give up on anything. So, and it sounds like
I
that's what you're doing. Go ahead.
I posted this photo on my Instagram the other day. I think you saw it. Um, it's
It's faint for me, but
it's very
okay. It's
faint.
a guy
Yeah.
looking at the Grim Reaper.
Yeah. And what I wrote was, he didn't knock, he never does. You just look up one day and he's already there. Hand out, no anger, no warning, just stillness. We spend our whole lives building walls against the inevitable, trying to out hustle the ticking clock, swallowing dreams like pills we'll get to someday. Oh, damn, I just lost it. Um, but time doesn't ask, fate doesn't RSVP, and death doesn't wait for your schedule to be clear. So if you're going to do something, do it. If there's a path to walk, run barefoot. If there's something you love, don't let the silence be the last thing between you, because in the end, it's never up to us.
You're right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And so, okay, so you're a father. I'm a father. I got two. And, if I quit, then they could, they'll quit on something later on in their lives. So, and that's how I keep looking at things. I don't want to quit. There's something huge on the horizon. Uh,
Yes.
I guess mission, vision, whatever you call it. It might not be something I even see yet, but continue to pursue and just see what happens. Um, Whoever this is reaching, I encourage that person listening or watching this that they can go ahead and just take that leap and just jump into something that they've been wanting to do for so long. Like you said, work on yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
And with you podcasting, I love when I hear, I never thought I would be doing this. That is the most magical words you could say, because it allows you to know that you have arrived to what you really love and just never thought was possible for yourself. And that's part of the dream, is having faith. Steve Harvey says, God delivers only to Faith Street. So if you're not on Faith Street, you're not going to get your mail.
oh gosh, you got a lot of good quotes you got over there. Oh man, full of them.
Yeah,
Um, so if you don't mind, let's just dive into the podcast part a little bit since we're both
great.
podcasters. So,
Yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong. Do you travel your podcast? I know you said
absolutely.
okay. And how's that work for you? What's that like?
Really good. Last year we were in 15 states in 12 months. We set up conventions. We had a 10 by 20-foot booth space. We had sponsors who helped financially pay for the trips. And we still had to invest our own money too. But we had sponsors. So when we weren't doing the podcast, we were acting as sales reps. And these are products that we actually use in our own gardens. So, it works out for them. It works out for us. And it was great. We did over, I think, 400 podcasts last year. Total, I think we're just shy of almost like 650. So really, really awesome. And these podcasts, when we're on the road, are about 10 minutes, because in one day we could probably see anywhere from maybe 10 to 14 people, throughout the day, because we're also walking around the convention floor and, checking things out, and we're not always at the booth. But it was really amazing. It was a great opportunity. It got us to a lot of different places, and building your national brand is imperative, especially for a company, because it's where you live. You may not always be well received, and strangers will love and support you way more than the people you know.
That's so right. That is
I'm
so
not going to use
true.
any names, but you know who you are.
That's right. Um, yeah, I mean that's pretty cool. So I asked because I haven't really traveled with a
Yeah.
podcast yet. So I was just curious. So you did the 10-minute episodes, and so were you just asking the same questions with these people, or trying to learn more about what they had to sell or something like that?
So a lot of times, a lot of people that come on the podcast had never been on a podcast ever before.
Okay.
I just have an innate ability to really work with people and make them feel extremely comfortable and get them talking. So I can show you a couple of podcasts and you probably can't guess which ones are first and which ones are reoccurring. But I don't really do the questions too much. I like what you kind of like what you're doing right now. Like sometimes I have a prerequisite, like when I do my trauma, like especially like PTSD or rape or suicide, because I have a lot of suicide victims about to come on, and I'm about to have my second shotgun survivor who shot himself in the face.
Mm.
And he's ready to tell all and very, very excited to do so. So when I do stuff like that, I'll usually have a prior meeting before the show that's about like 2 hours or an hour long, and we'll go do a deep dive. And I'll also find out like what they're comfortable with, what they want to talk about, if there's anything that we should leave off. Like sometimes people will have like ongoing cases, like, and they're like, hey, until everything's closed with my ex-husband or whatever, I don't want this portion to be released or whatever. So
Mhm.
it can really range, but when it's just an average person on the showroom floor, I may know who they are. They may be a vendor, or they may be somebody I know that's in the community, or it could be a perfect stranger. So the whole thing is, we're sitting down and they get to pick the subject and we just go, and kind of like you learn as a podcaster just how to adapt, and you just got to keep the conversation going. And as long as they're smiling and having a good time, it usually makes for a good show.
Well, I guess I'm doing a good thing
You're
there.
doing a great
All
thing.
right. That's awesome.
Yeah, dude, this is great.
So my last question about the podcasting part. So did you like this cube or whatever you call it, where you recorded, did that pack up and go with you to these other?
Yeah,
Okay.
so we have full banners, 10-foot banners with our sponsors logo, our logos. We had tablecloths that all were matching. We had the pull-up sign. So we were an actual booth. So when you came and walked the showroom floor, you would instantly see all the cameras and everything set up for the podcast.
Gotcha. So it wasn't like a room and then you had everything inside the
No,
room. It
we're
was
in
it was the it
convention
was an open
centers.
booth. Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I figure like an enclosed because of sound and stuff like that is
Yeah,
what
we're indoor.
right. But
But
I'm just thinking of like a room, you know what I mean? That's kind of what
oh,
I'm thinking in my
gotcha.
head. Yeah. Ah,
I
that's awesome.
wish. If the budget would allow, I am there.
Well, next time. That's what's going on. So, Stefan, how can people connect with you, learn everything about what you shared that you're doing, and who knows what else is coming up?
Okay, so madmanplant.com is the website for Madman Plant, and that's cannabis and mental health. We have a great platform on there, and we have a live calendar. So if you do have a story and you want to be on the show, all you have to do is go to the website and sign up. It runs live for 90 days ahead of schedule. So you can automatically apply and you'll fill out the form. The form will ask you several questions about your story or whatever you want to talk about, and then we go. The person I have on tomorrow night was actually featured on Soft White Underbelly, which he's a very prominent interviewer. And if you haven't seen him, some really great stories, from the streets of LA. So, Madman Plant, and then Good Luck Steph is my production company. So if people ever needed video production or marketing, that's what we do. It's for a living as well. But other than that, it's through the social media and just, following up with the shows and just, kind of just being open minded to the conversation about mental health. And if, you're not comfortable with it, building a comfortability is a very empowering thing, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. So I have one last question I ask everybody at the end, and I first got to say that it sounds like you have a whole bunch of stuff you could still share with me, and
Well, my podcast is 2 hours long, so I hope you're
yes,
ready for that.
I know. I'm like,
So I
what?
usually have 3 hour shows. Some of my
Yeah.
shows have gone 4 hours. Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's interesting. So I'm curious to know what you're going to pull out of me or somebody else, right? In
Well, you
two
got to fill
hours.
out the form and then I'll know.
uh, but no, so we didn't even dive into most of the stuff that you probably could share. Like you mentioned a few little stories here and there as you went. So
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate you sharing what you did so far. But my question is, what are three key things you've learned and used along your journey?
Well, I always, if there's three things, it's not my cardinal rules, but I've applied them to my life and it helps me understand the time and space of being an entrepreneur. And the first one is only walk into rooms where people light up when they see you. Number two is the fastest way to get where you want to be is slowly. And number three, the top of one mountain is the bottom of the next. So keep climbing.
That's right. I heard something along the lines for the last
It's
one
on
too.
Instagram. It's a famous actor said it, but I just
Okay.
don't know the actor's name. But
Yeah.
I
I'm trying
love
to
the
think now.
rules.
Yes, I like it too. So you said walk, what's the first one again? You walk into a room where people appreciate you,
Only where people light up when they see you.
light up. So why is that?
Because there's a great analogy. So there was a violinist, world class, and he was put in the subway station of New York. And he played there for 2 hours. And for 2 hours, people just walked right by him and didn't pay any attention. The very next night, he played in Madison Square Garden, where over 5,000 people were glued to him playing for 2 hours. What's the difference? The difference is the environment that you're in. If you're actually trying to do something with your life that's meaningful, you have to have people around you that find it meaningful. Because if you spend your time trying to convince people who never see your vision, who never respect you, who never think that you're amount to anything, you're not going to get anywhere. You need people, you need influence, and you need the right influence. So when you have people around you that actually are excited to see you and they want to see you and they want to see you succeed, how much faster do you think you're going to succeed as a person when you're in a room of people who want you to do something versus those who don't give a fuck and think that you're probably going to fail anyways? It's very important. And that's why I spend a lot more time by myself, and have really locked down, a group of what I call a board of advisors, of really good friends that I trust, that I like their lifestyle. They're older, they're where I want to be, and I only listen to them. And when it comes to advice, because why should I listen to somebody who's in the same boat with me, or somebody that's competing with me, versus somebody who lives in where I want to be and can give me answers now, So it's very important. That social circle is not just who you know, it's the quality of people. Will they refer you? Will they think of you? Will they put you to the top of their conversations when the topic comes up that could, benefit you? And if you're not, well, it is what it is. That's why sometimes I like to be alone versus in a crowded room, because, the quality difference.
Yeah, you're right. I do find myself in solitude a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to think, right? And I know Abraham Lincoln was a big one. And I know I'm going off here a little bit, but I forget where he went when he was president, but he would go to a house that wasn't too far away and just sit there for hours just thinking.
Yeah.
And I think it was trying to think of the guy's name that wrote that book. Um, D- uh, uh, Dale Carnegie. It was a book of Abraham Lincoln. It's like not like it's known but not well known, I guess. If you wanted to ever look it up, and he actually researched the history on Abraham, found some of his family members that were still around when he was able to figure it all out. But I feel like that's what we need sometimes. We just need to be alone and with our thoughts, yeah, and kind of feel it out. To go back on what you said about your circle, right? I don't know what you would call this. I look at it as like a target, and you got all the rings, and you can kind of move the people around. Like
Yeah,
I want this guy.
exactly.
Yeah, I want this guy to be in the bullseye. Like I got focused on these five people now, and okay, I got what I got. Let's move them out and bring somebody else in, maybe. But yeah, so I follow you. I understand what you're saying. Surround yourself with the right people. I'm glad I questioned that one of those key things because that opened up a whole bunch there, and you kind of pretty much summed up the whole episode. So I appreciate it coming on, Stefan. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And I look forward to spending some time with you as well on my podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited. Again, I don't know what you're going to pour out of me, but I'm sure you get a lot out of me.
It'd be a great conversation, since, you do a lot and you've been published, it'd be a good conversation about, your journey and mental health and, clarity. I don't know if you're in the cannabis space or community, but, if you are, we talk about plants or whatever. So
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, I'll definitely get on that and we'll get something going.
perfect.
Awesome. Thank you.